Welcome to Sacred Matrix, a divine paradigm of love and universal consciousness, with your host, Janet Kira Lessin and Dr. Sasha Lessin.
Together we transform the world.
And now, here are your hosts, Janet Kira and Dr. Sasha Lessin.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Sacred Matrix. I'm your host, Janet Kira Lessin, and I'm here with my co-host, Dr. Sasha Alex Lessin. Our producer is Debra DeFranco, and you're listening to Revolution Radio, Studio B. Our guest today is Elizabeth Anglin, and I want to tell you a little bit about her before we bring her on. She's been on before. She's an author of the Experiencer Memoirs. It's a 3-book series about living as an alien abductee and abduction research subject with Dr. John Mack at Harvard University. So her first book is Memoirs of an Abducted Childhood. So she was an abductee since childhood, and she participated at the Abduction Studies Conference at MIT, and part of her experiences were shared in Dr. Mack's books, Abduction and Passport to the Cosmos. So I'm not going to read her bio. I've got a whole page up on aquarianradio.com with pictures, and I have the links to her previous talks and times she's been on here and other shows. So before I bring on Elizabeth, sorry, I was scrolling down. Dr. Lessin worked with John Mack, which is an interesting synchronicity. So what would you like to say before we bring on Elizabeth?
Okay, so this is listen up, everybody. Elizabeth is one of the smartest people on the planet, and she's been chosen as an ambassador and developed her own reflection, plus the help she's gotten, and she's got some real wisdom to share. So just open up your heart and open up your intellect and take it in.
Welcome back to the show, Elizabeth.
Hi, thank you.
Yeah, I wanted to go in a little bit of your story to begin with, and in this episode, I'd like to go deeper into your work with Dr. Mack, because he was one of the pioneers. He was there with Bud Hopkins, and they were sometimes colleagues, sometimes in opposition. So this is the infancy of this research that we have now, which 20 years later is a gigantic field with thousands of experiencers now coming forth and different categories. Like Dr. Lessin said, you're an ambassador. We have the secret space program people. We have people they consist of abductees, contactees, and some people say we're just experiencers of paranormal and alternative reality. So I'm going to pass it to you. Be aware that there are probably new listeners here and some that have been here before, but try to reach out to everybody and give them something to grab onto so they have a better understanding of what we're trying to convey here. Take it away, Elizabeth.
Okay, so lately I didn't used to be this way, but I feel like a distinction should be made between paranormal experiencers and alien abductees, because I have met lately very few new alien abductees. I've met people who have woken up to their experiences in the last 10 years, who were around when I was around, who we met on ships and we did stuff when we were younger and that sort of thing. But being an alien abductee is actually a physical thing, and it does include missing time, where people are looking for you in many cases, and you've actually not been in bed, you've not been in a hypnagogic state. It hasn't been some sort of demonic possession or the hag or anything like that. You're literally just not there, and nobody can find you. And so my situation was interesting to Dr. Mack. I had my first wake 'em up or real wake 'em up and shake 'em up experience on November 29th, 1989, which was the same night that Linda Napolitano of the Brooklyn Bridge incident had her first wake 'em up and shake 'em up experience, where she could not deny that she was being visited, and she remembered the initial part of it. And I actually managed to break the control, and I remembered my whole experience, which was basically just an alien coming up to my bedroom loft with 5 other aliens in the house and the cat going to play with them, and this one little alien looking at me and making it so I couldn't move, and looking at me and thinking, look at me, and showing me its face from side to side and saying, see, we're related. And I couldn't move, and so I'm yelling at it in my head, I can see you, you effing little effer, and I'm effing going to effing move. I'm yelling at it because what's coming back to me is I can't move, is that this has all happened before, and I know this has happened before, and I don't necessarily like what happens when this happens. So it was the same night that Linda Napolitano had her experience. I was so freaked out by mine that I ended up getting in contact with Bud Hopkins, and within about a week. And Bud got back to me, I think, within about 10 days. And I think he was interested because he had been talking with Linda, and we had had these 2 wake-up experiences on the same night. And somebody had gotten him in contact with John Mack, somebody who was involved in holotropic breath work with Stan Groff, and so he was actually looking for someone to work with Dr. Mack, and asked me if I'd be willing to talk to him. And of course, the first thing that comes to mind is, for most people, is, oh, well, is this Harvard psychiatrist going to find me a rubber room, so I can, get taken out of society and not have a life? And Bud assured me that he was a really cool guy and that wasn't going to happen, and I'd probably be very helped to talk to him. And round about a month later, in January, a little over a month, I had my first conversation with Dr. Mack of January 1990, and the only thing I came away from thinking was, wow, I thought I was smart, but this guy is ridiculous. It's like, he's talking about stuff I don't even know about, and using words I don't understand. And so,
right, wow.
But he was very nice, and he was very cool, and but obviously educated and not even aware of how educated he was. He'd just throw out those words, and you'd just be like, ontological shock, sure. I think that means freaking out. Okay, yeah, I was freaking out. Shock, freaking out. Okay, I'll just
that wake him up, shake him up date again. I'm going to write that down. What was that?
November 29th, 1989.
Okay, and when did Whitley Strieber's Communion come out? Was that before that?
I think his came out in 87. His book was out, and a friend of mine suggested that I read it. And part of what had happened was a friend had gotten the book for me because he had asked me. I went on a date with this guy at work in October, and it was like this late Indian summer that year, and we were at the beach, and he had asked me what my strangest experience ever had been, and I described the UFO landing in my best friend's backyard, and me hitting the floor, and then feeling like I was getting sucked through. I hit the floor in the kitchen, and I was behind the kitchen island, but I felt like I was getting sucked through it out the back window. And that's all I remembered about that. Because it had been funny, because my friend had pointed at me that something was going on, and I was like, my back was to the window, and all of a sudden she looked behind me and pointed at the window like you do when you're trying to freak out your friend that there's a scary axe murderer behind them.
Right.
And then she froze, and I turned around, my head snapped around to look, and the whole entire window was full of lights that, obviously UFO lights, couldn't have been anything else, like just beaming through the windows, and I hit the dirt, And I was like, oh no, they're coming to get me again.
Did they end up sucking you out the window? Like, see, for people who don't know, Linda Napolitano was taken out of, I think it was like the 14th floor of a high-rise in New York City, and a bunch of people on the Brooklyn Bridge witnessed, including some high-level...
and photographed.
Did they photograph it?
I think the guys who were with Perez de Cuellar, or that was supposedly Perez de Cuellar, did get photographs. And there might have been some other photographs from the bridge. But they were on the street, sort of down the street from her house, as far as from what I remember, and they saw her in her pink nightie being floated out the window. I was behind a kitchen island on the floor, but I could feel myself start to go through the kitchen island, and then I didn't remember anything else after that.
So you passed out. And when I got to Oahu in '93, I was living in a high rise, and they sucked me out the 16th floor right through the window.
But what do you mean? Right. You mean by feel yourself being? Does it tingle? Does it?
What does it feel like to you? Yeah.
It's a little bit like going through thick water. So, and this happened to me, and during my regressions, like I was living in a basement of a 3-story house, and so there were 3 other stories above me. So the first year I worked with John and we were going over like current experiences, they oftentimes floated me through my upstairs neighbors had the bedroom right above my bedroom. So one time I got floated through my upstairs neighbor as she was studying French, and I came back in the morning speaking French, which I had not ever studied French. And I'm like naming things as I'm on my way to work going, what's up with this French? And then the next day I heard her upstairs and talked to her, and she said, yeah, I'm going to France. I've been studying French. And I went, oh, okay, because I went right through her. And we did a regression for it, and sure enough, she was studying French as I went right through her, and then I went up another level, and then I went through the top of the house. So,
Do you still parler français?
No, it went real quick, but it was like this, weird thing. I wake up in the morning and I was like, I'm speaking French, so, and I was really into it too. Like I picked up her joie de vivre for speaking French, so to speak, and, but because I went through her. So, and it was a physical abduction. I was gone. It wasn't like I astrally went through her. Even though I did astrally go through her too, because if you're physical, you're also astral. In this particular state, it's not, your body is in your spirit, not the other way around. So anyway, it's like going through something that's just slightly more solid than the air around you. And oftentimes if somebody does remote viewing or does other kind of astral intuitive work, you can get sensations while you do it when you bilocate someplace. Or even if you astral travel, it might feel somewhat like this, but this is a little more chunky. It's a little bit more solid because you're still solid, but you've either been expanded or contracted in some way so that your phase shifted. The best way I can put it is it's a phase shift of your vibration. And if you want to know how to look up phase shifting for waveforms, all it is you put some imaginary number, which is really weird because everybody wants to say that this experience is an imaginary number. But anytime you want to phase shift a waveform of any type or any type of energy waveform, you put an I by it. So, basically I was phase shifted. I'll just put it that way. And went right through her, went through everything. And it was weird because I could still see it all. Like I could see, I could see the flooring and the subflooring and the bed and what she was looking at, and then the ceiling, and then the roofing shingles. The roofing shingles were the weirdest thing because you're outside all of a sudden and it's cold and you've gone through roofing shingles. But yeah, when I was a kid, it used to happen, but it was just like the light was so bright that I was always afraid of the little white man in the white van with the bright light that would suck me out of my ceiling. But I was more aware of the light than I was of the ceiling or anything above me.
So you're saying that these, so you're finding people are having paranormal, but it's Yours is a different type of experience than most people. Is that what you're saying?
Way more physical.
Way more.
It's way that there are a set of abductees who were the original. I'm going to call them originals because Bud Hopkins was clearly interested. Yeah, they've been.
Say that whole sentence. Yeah, broke up. Go ahead.
So I'm going to call this physical alien abduction. There's a group of people that have physical abductions. It is different than a paranormal experience. We're also paranormal experiencers because we're kind of like paranormal experience magnets. Once you have this going on and your consciousness gets expanded, you become aware of other things that are happening around you. Mm-hmm. And so you may have other experiences, but not everybody has to have this experience to be a paranormal experiencer. So,
understood. Wait, I gotta understand. Wow. Slow that down again, really, because you're making a distinction between the degree of solidity and a degree of physicality. That is the utterly main difference. Do I have you right?
If you are an alien abductee who has been physically missing, has had physical missing time, you come back with scoop marks. You're missing a baby. When a baby was there, or you're missing. You have physical changes. You're having physical effects that are beyond just somatic processing effects. You have pain. You're doing things to get yourself out of pain. I ate Oreo cookies. A lot of them.
Oh, that was mine. I struggled. I finally have weaned myself from Oreos, and now I'm on Hershey's.
But it wasn't abductions for either of you. What I'm hearing, it was a relationship.
No, everything is. So here's the thing, like when the person I was on, who was the wonderful lady I was on with? I'm sorry, I can't remember her name. Nancy Tremaine, where she said that the aliens said that harm is perceived. Well, okay, this is such a typical alien response to, we're not really taking any responsibility for how you perceive what we do to you.
Woo.
Okay? That's really all they said. When somebody says harm is perceived, it's putting it back on the victim. Harm is absolutely effing perceived. And guess what? We are human beings who have had our memories kept from us. We don't necessarily know what we agreed to before we got here. And as far as I know, as a 13-year-old, 14-year-old, 19-year-old, 23-year-old, 24-year-old, I am being abducted and effed with in a very painful way. And I come back in the morning and I am screwed up. Okay, you can say harm is perceived as an alien saying, we don't really hurt you. Harm is just perceived.
But do you now think that this was to your benefit? Was this from overall a benefit to you? And if
it was my service work. Is it a benefit to me? Do people who go to war say that going to war was a benefit to them? I mean, my consciousness, because I worked with John and because I didn't end up becoming an alcoholic or a foodaholic, or because I know people who are still, they have barely touched the surface. They are real abductees. They can't sleep alone at night. They have agoraphobia. Their lives are completely compacted by how much fear and how much trauma they have. And this is the point that I'm making, is that when we originally did this work, it was so that other people could get help not to have their lives compacted by their trauma, that they wouldn't end up in a rubber room, that they would have somebody who was knowledgeable enough or had some basis of understanding for the experience to identify that this person actually is an abductee. They've had physical missing time. They've had police looking for them. They've had parents looking for them. They've had neighbors looking for them. That the type of thing that they're saying isn't a manic depression, it isn't a psychosis, it isn't a schizoaffective disorder, they're highly functioning otherwise, but yet there is still this thing that has happened to them and they are traumatized. Mm-hmm. That was what we were trying to do, was to make sure that people like us got the help that they needed. Mm-hmm. Because I literally would take days off after my experiences and spend the day eating Oreos until I threw up.
Wow. Let me ask you a couple questions on that, because when I was 4, they took me at high noon. The sun was up high, mm-hmm. right? It was like May or June. And I returned and the sun was setting and nobody looked for me. What do they do to my whole family? Nobody said anything. Nobody looked for me. What did you do? Black them out? But I know I was gone all day.
Maybe they weren't good parents and they didn't notice.
No, it could be that there was the power of suggestion, because there is definitely suggestive mind control, and the little blue guys have it, the ships have it. What people see as screen memories is oftentimes the biological ships are able to they can read energy like that. They can tell you what's in you. If you ever get connected with a biological ship, they know you better than you know yourself. So when they are creating screen memories, which is how they are able to basically not be seen, because they make people think that they're seeing something they expect to see, or something that fits within their reality construct for that individual person or for that group of people. They'll pick the one, if they have a group, they'll pick the one that most people in the group are going to be better with. So, for example, there were these guys in Dr. Mack's group the first year that we had support group in 1990. They had been in a group abduction from a lake in northern New Hampshire. They were all bikers who were on a biker camping trip up in the White Mountains. And the poor ship didn't know what to make of it, so it showed itself as a tow truck coming down from the side. And everybody knows tow trucks don't fly or fly over lakes and land on beaches, right? So these guys all knew. They were like, there wasn't just one person or two people that they had to convince. It was like a whole group of biker campers who went, what the crap is a tow truck doing coming out of the sky flying over that lake, coming toward us, And so they knew. Everybody on that camping trip knew something had happened. And two of those guys were actually lifetime experiencers, and they just happened to be on a bike trip together because they were such good friends. They had clicked immediately because of the energy of what they'd both been through. And they knew each other previous to that trip. But they had become fast friends as soon as they first met because of the energies of what they had been through, and they both had lifetimes of experience. So, but there were other people on that trip who saw the tow truck. They didn't get abducted, but they were on the beach, and they saw the tow truck flying over the lake. So my point is that there is suggestive mind control, that there is energy reading, that there's telepathic, hey, what are you about? What's going to look to you like something that belongs, even if it doesn't. If we do something weird, how can we cover this up? And we'll use your own mind to do it to you. And this doesn't mean that experiencers, by and large, don't know what's happening to them. It just means at certain times, if you're not aware of what it looks like, you're going to get fooled.
I'm still being taken on. I'm still going on experiences, and they fill my mind with a bunch of stuff before I wake up, before they return me and I wake up, right? And I'll wake up, I go, that's a bunch of babble, because they don't want me to remember what really happened, so they fill it with all these things, like, I have to get home, I have to get on the bus, it's just, and I wake up and go, that was just a bunch of bullshit. What are you covering that you don't want me to return with, right? So I know that's ongoing. Now I want to go back to the physical stuff, because I used to wake up and I had been obviously screaming all night. My throat hurts. My memories are of just like fighting and screaming and having some kind of argument. And my eyes, I have to go to work. I'm in an office. I have to wear a dress and heels, and my eyes are so puffy. They look horrible. and I try to cover it with makeup. What kind of physical effects did you have that you said were painful and you stifled your emotions?
Oftentimes, I was in the hybrid program or whatever you want to call it. A lot of my kids were actually human because they had me with other humans, and I've met a couple of them. But so it would be pelvic pain. Period would start to be really heavy. It would be headaches, really super, super supremely bad headaches. I later became a migrainer, but these were different than migraine. They were more pointed at different areas in the head. And usually I'd be implants coming in or coming out or both, something coming in, something coming out, something else going in. Also freaked out, scared, not wanting to go outside, wanting to stay in bed, wanting to cover up with all the covers, anxious. I had such anxiety. I mean, literally, if I don't know how my life would be if not for Dr. Mack because of the anxiety I had before I knew I was an abductee was pretty great. There were days when, I didn't sign up for my junior year at Berklee College of Music because I couldn't get out of bed. So I couldn't go register. And there was a day to register, and I couldn't get myself to walk down the street because I had just had an experience. So I didn't walk down the street and go register. That's how bad it got.
Right.
And I know people who are now my age, or I knew people in my 40s who were a similar age to me who never got help and were really into UFO stuff, thought they had happened, and I'd ask them about their life and, their anxiety levels. Anyway, I'm just so grateful that I had Dr. Mack because we dealt with, through a process of flooding, like how many times can you go through a regression before you're like, oh yeah, that. Yeah, I think I'm going to go out and walk under the moonlight or the no moonlight. Or I'm going to walk around the desert in the middle of the night without anybody, and I'll be fine, Right. Whereas before it was 9 o'clock in the morning and I couldn't walk down the main drag of a big city because I was afraid, But now I can go out in the middle of nowhere where I have obviously seen aliens in that middle of nowhere or seen ships and stuff, and I'm not afraid at all. But that has to do with I know where I am as an experiencer now. I'm no longer an abductee now. I know what happens. I've been through it so many times, and they call that flooding. It's like what you do to sack out a horse. Oh, this stuff again. All right. Okay, fine.
Where were you when this was happening? What part of the world? And then Sasha has a question.
Well, I grew up in Michigan, and then when I worked with John, I was living in the greater Boston area, and so I went to school in Boston and was in school for a long time. I did 2 different kinds of degrees, and so it mainly was Michigan and Boston. I was in New Mexico for a little bit of that time, which comes up, and then I've come back to New Mexico. I'm not an abductee anymore, and then I've lived in Colorado and had non-abductee experiences in Colorado as well. So,
you want to ask your question?
Yeah, if you had engineered, constructed, and created these experiences, including the very adverse ones that you talked about, for your own spiritual advancement and lessons that would serve yourself and humanity. Could you see it that way? And
well, we used to talk. John and I used to talk about that all the time, and I do see it. I mean, literally, rather than going the Bud Hopkins route. So here's the difference. Like, yeah, I've taken responsibility. That's why I'm not an abductee anymore. Is I took responsibility for. I chose this. I have an agreement with these kings. Now, that doesn't mean that I remembered that I chose it. It still means that I still have trauma as a human being who has a personality who thinks they're one thing and then finds out they're something else. There's
Gotcha.
no way around that. I have trauma trying to date. Oh my God, I can't let anybody know who I am. It's like there's this whole other huge, thing going on with me, which I literally never scratched the surface of. And I know people who are married who their spouses will never talk to them about their stuff, and they go through it alone. So there's this trauma of being intensely alone as an abductee in this society. And it doesn't mean that the person who sees a ghost is going to do it for you, or the person who sees Bigfoot, or the person who telepathically talks to Bigfoot is going to do it for you. All these other experiencers who get together and say, rah, 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 guess what, guys? You got it frickin' fucking easy. Excuse my French. I don't know if I can say that on here. But you have it. You know, it's not the same. It's a harder core thing. It's a scarier thing. Nobody wants to be abducted, or people want to be abducted, but they don't really want to be abducted. You know, the reactions you get from people if you talk about it, unless you get really strong, they like to energetically get in your space and hack you up with energetic, you know, knives. It's been a trip energetically ever since I started working with Dr. Mack and doing media, with how many energetic attacks there were from people, how many energetic attacks there were from the other side of the alien thing, which I call the power mongers, who are not what the conspiracy theories are talking about necessarily, but kind of that way. There's been all sorts of other stuff that I've had to become aware of just to keep navigating through a life where this doesn't really fit and it doesn't really belong. But and
what are these power mongers? Explain that a little bit more, please.
They're a kind of vampiric alien race that likes to suck the energy out of living things and control them so they can keep sucking the energy out of living things. And they're not, as far as I can tell, they're not physicalized. They're astral beings. But they trick a lot of people into getting like non-physical implants where if you do something they don't like, they can suck all the energy out of you and make you real sick if you don't follow their plan.
Sounds like the CIA.
Yeah, you know, it's like, right, it sounds like things. There are analogs to them all over our society. But that doesn't mean that those analogs are them or the they. It just means that they're analogs. That anything that behaves like that is an analog.
How do you know they exist? Have you had experiences with them?
Yes. I finally got out of having to deal with them. I worked with a woman named Susan Taylor Shire, who I was writing my first book, and every time I'd go on the radio, I would have severe fatigue for a week afterward, and brain fog, and couldn't get anything done, and felt like I was, you know, literally just didn't have any energy, and headaches, and she identified that basically I was I had an implant that I accepted on my way into embodiment from these beings who showed up and looked friendly and said, "Here, you want to take that with you down there? That'll be helpful. Not helpful to you, helpful to them." But they said, "That'll be helpful." Oh, okay, I want to be helpful. I'll take this thing. So she identified it and we dissolved it. You know, basically went to my place of power and dissolved it, and I've never had a problem since. And I know other people who are writers who had similar experiences, but I can't say who they are because I don't want to out them. So.
Right. Wow. Okay. And then, so we have stories of all these vampiric beings. So I want to talk about that a little bit more. I want to go back one thing. You said you were part of the human program, and I was told I was part of the human program too. What does that mean?
Well, so not every. My neighbor next door is into all the QAnon stuff, and so her latest thing has been like. Her latest thing is like the alien hybrids are actually demons and they're coming to do terrible things. And I'm like, oh, honey, you just called me and my children demons, you know, and friends, you know. And I'm like, oh, ow, 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 ow. You know, my next door neighbor, I love you, ow. But
Did
so.
she get it? That she was Really?
No, I can't even begin to go there because she's trying to explain to me how all aliens are demons, and I'm like, no, I actually clear people of demons as my daily work, and help, and I actually do know about aliens, and they're not the same thing at all. They're two totally separate things. But okay, honey, But she really wants me to know. She is going to make sure that I know. She doesn't listen, but she can talk. And It doesn't matter what I know, so I just listen while she makes sure that I know.
I was at a conference, and there were two hybrids, and they were talking about being hybrids. They were on stage, and this guy jumped up and said, "You should all be killed," and that's where it's coming from. I didn't know where in the world that came from. That this person thought these hybrids should be killed. Wow, that's scary.
It's coming from the QAnon and it's coming from what's happened to the field in terms when we get into these far politicized conspiracy theories, because there have been people have been hybridized probably from the beginning. Our whole human race is probably a hybridized creation, and there are some of us who are in bodies that are hybridized bodies. So, for example, I can work with ships. Don't tell the military this, of course, they probably already know. But I can work with the biological ships, and I'm exceedingly telepathic, and I have some other telekinetic and thought abilities. But when this little blue alien looked at me, and he looked like a harbor seal, but I could tell from his cheekbones, just the shape of his cheekbones, that we were related. So, and the little blue aliens often do the mind control stuff, and they keep your body from moving, and, so it's like there is a relationship that is at the genetic level of whatever kind for probably everybody back into the beginning.
Right.
And then there are just some of us who are working on refined versions or new versions of that relationship. So, and we don't remember that we're coming in here to work on refined versions or new versions of that relationship. And so, yes, we do get traumatized because we don't remember that's what we're doing. So,
wow, we have often inside of us. Ontogeny recapitulates phylogeny.
Yeah.
Ow! What do you mean? Phylogeny, I forgot that word.
If you behold an aquatic being, that means that there's a fractal of that aquatic being within you.
Right. That's right.
You can tell that's why Dr. Lessin was John Mack's colleague. They could talk like that and nobody would know what they're saying.
And that's a normal conversation for them. Yeah. For the rest of us, like, oh man, I gotta get my dictionary out. And then the problem is, Sasha, here in my little town, everybody's like, I'm walking around saying stuff, and people are like, oh man, I got to get my dictionary out. And I'm like, I'm not that smart.
So in the first perinatal matrix, you're swimming in a womb. There's plenty of room, and you are indeed a swimming creature. And later on, of course, that constricts and so forth. But we actually we are aquatic in our biology.
Right.
Before we come out even, we are aquatic.
Right. Horses are aquatic. Did you know that horses have the same skeletal structure as whales? I mean, and the other cool thing about horses is that they may hold the key to morphic resonance fields, because they genetically change all at the same time, even if they're not related to each other. There are certain genetic changes that happen to all of them at once. So.
Wow.
Yeah, it's kind of. I just thought it was cool that you're looking.
Like the 100 monkey, they all change genetically just by being in the morphogenic field.
It's like the whale songs; they jump from Atlantic to Pacific when there's a new song.
Amazing! Wow.
Yeah. So, how does this song get there like that? Yeah, exactly. So
I want to keep going back to so you're in the human program, and I met a dragon, and she said, although I look nothing like you, I am your mother. And all all humanity is related to me and I to them. So, and I was just left with that. Deciphered that myself. And then at one point I was shown my son by Sasha with Sasha's DNA, but it was also enhanced with the DNA. And they showed me holding the baby, and then he was a toddler, he was a young child all the way up to an adult. So he took me through time, and I could see that this child was a combination of my genetics and Sasha's genetics. Right. But it was like I was not meant to give birth or raise any children in this lifetime.
Yeah.
So that's, because I was part of some kind of human. But they said, you're not part of the gray program. We have you in the human program. So what does that mean to you when you say you're part of the human program?
Well, I don't remember having, I know that they took a lot of babies, but I don't remember seeing any babies that were not human. And I do know that of 3 human fathers of 3 children that I can remember and I telepathically connect with at this time. So one actually doesn't live in this physical dimension. So that's a little weird. You have to do quantum jumping to contact her. One is the other 2 are here, and they have 2 different fathers. So there are 3. I know all 3 of those children. There are other children that, for whatever reason, they're blocked from me, but I don't necessarily. There was another father who showed up, and I remote viewed what our relationship was, and we had a child who was doing so poorly that he was actually in a stasis chamber. And wasn't going to be woken up until 14 because of neurological issues with the spinal column. They something had been done in the whole process to make the brain capacity more less caveman-like, more alien-like, and it hadn't, in terms of how this kid could develop, he was in a stasis chamber. So I spent a good summer with this kid's dad, and the dad is totally freaking out because he thinks that, he doesn't have any respect for his own between lifetime agreements, and he thinks that the aliens have his kid and they're doing horrible experiments on it. Well, actually, there was an agreement for this, and, I ended up not having to speak with him anymore because he was going off into this MyLab program of wanting just to kill aliens, kill aliens, kill aliens, kill aliens, kill aliens. And I was like, this is not helpful. It's not going to.
So this was a 3D relationship you had.
Yeah, they were saving and rehabilitating the child.
Well, wait, so this was a 3D human relationship you had with this man, which was the father of your child that was on board the ship. Am I getting that correct?
Yeah, and I don't really know that. I don't know that child except from my relationship doing healings on that child in the stasis tube. And it doesn't look like being in the blue gel or whatever people talk about. It's more like it wasn't that kind of a thing. So I don't really have a relationship besides doing healings on this child. And I really don't want to have anything to do with that child's father. Because he's a nut job. So
you haven't met this child, but it hasn't been you haven't had a conversation with this child. It was when you worked with it was still in stasis.
It's still in stasis. As far as I know, I don't know if I've had any in the astral. I haven't, had any regressions lately, and I haven't had any memories. I think that the kid is still in stasis, but nearly out. So
how are you getting the information on this child? Like I had another child by another man that I was badly in love with before I met Sasha, and they showed me my little girl with him, and once again you could see that there's DNA from both of us.
Well,
when I had the conversation, they said this is the child that you had with Ed, I'll use his name, and I actually had copulated with both Sasha and with both Ed. And with my children, they wanted me to have physical experiences with the children that were conceived, because something about making love, having sex, and having orgasm made a stronger child genetically.
Yes. It makes a stronger, it makes the spirit of it helps the spirit of the child be attached to the body. It helps them grow because they have the key, they have the energy to grow. So, and it also helps them expand their other faculties, because you're going up levels of energy. If you're getting into orgasms, if you're getting into those higher levels of energy that you can get into during sex, then if you do it in the appropriate way, it basically just super energizes everything in a very positive way. But the other thing is, human beings need each other. You need your familial energies.
Right.
So the kid in the stasis pod, I've been outside the stasis pod sending him energy before many times, but I haven't actually picked him up or played with him or anything like that, because his spinal column and his it's basically his spinal column and his neck is too fragile.
So you have sexual relationships with this child's father in 3D
yes.
world?
Well,
Okay.
I don't remember those, but I'm sure I did, because when I was under regression with Dr. Mack, I was having sexual relationships with men on ships. So it was like, and I wasn't having sexual relationships, as far as I remember, with aliens. You know, there's no alien that I'm missing that is my alien baby daddy. I don't have any of that, but I did have, there was a gentleman who showed up at the 2015 IUFOC who, you know, not to put too fine a point on it, I remembered him and he remembered what our relationship was, and what I do is I remote view it. Is I target it and I remote view it, and I have a series of protocols that aren't the same as Farsight or anything. They're different protocols, but they're quick and they're good and they're very accurate. And I remote view what our relationship was, so now I can go in and bilocate to specific points in time along our relationship, or the most important points, or I'll even ask, you know, the situation I most need to know about, and I'll bilocate right to it and go, oh yeah, okay, yeah, there we go. And it's not that the aliens are telling me this, it's like I'm standing there going, or I'm in myself going, aha, okay, right, there he is, there I am, this is what we're doing, all right. You know, so
you have relationships, meaning onboard ship relationships.
Yeah, onboard ship relationships. And, you know, this guy who showed up at IUFOC, I write about him in the book. And he's the naked kid at the window. And we have a manipulated hot and heavy Romeo and Juliet thing going on. And and what happened, and he's felt bad about it, and it's affected his entire life, is that he was, when I got pregnant with our daughter, he was so keen to get to me that he was on a ship and he killed everybody on the ship in order to get to me. And it wasn't people. He didn't kill human beings. He just killed a bunch of aliens. And I laugh when I say that, because they get back in body real quickly and they don't forget anything. So it's not like you've totally wiped out, you know, an independent personality. You know, it's like, re-upload. Okay, here I am again. You know, but he felt very badly about it because he was a kid and he didn't really, and he was killing things. And, you know, and we have a Judeo-Christian ethic of thou shalt not kill. And
right.
It's like, you know, and he managed to get away, and that's when he was at my window, and I happened to be pregnant at that time. And he knew all about it. But his situation actually changed the course of my experiences and how I was treated. Because we were in a program to make human pilots, and they were hoping that our kids would be human pilots. Didn't work out that way. My daughter with him is not a pilot. It was also...
They have to be able to communicate with the ships, right? They have to have a certain level of psychic ability to be a pilot. Because these are...
You have to have an energetic ability that's big.
Right.
You have to be able to handle that kind of energy. So you have to be big. And this is not saying like, hey, I'm, the god so-and-so. This is just you have an energetic ability that's big. It's just big. That's all.
Sash, go ahead.
Well, I'm just, I'm thinking that if you could remotely or however you want to do it, go to that child, that's your child that you can't touch, but touch him with your spirit hands and
do it all the time. No, that's what I do. That's how I know this child.
Yeah. What's that like?
Yeah. The father wasn't getting it. Like I was trying to explain to him, no, this is what's going on. They're not experimenting on this child. This child came out genetically in such a way that he can't physically exist outside of the stasis pod until some things happen, which they're trying to move along happening. But eventually, the hope is he'll get out of the stasis pod and, be able to interact and be social and all this other stuff. But the father was so wrapped up in his trauma and so listening to other sources of information that really harp on the trauma, like, yeah, I'll say we're traumatized. It's true. We are traumatized. But does that mean we're stupid? No. Does that mean we're victims? No. Does it mean we don't understand what we've been through? No. It means that until we do understand it, we're more traumatized than we actually need to be. And when we do understand it and we understand our part in agreeing to it, we can change our agreement.
He was predisposed to be angry.
He was predisposed to be angry. Yes, he was. And he was predisposed to want to be the hero who beat up the threat. But literally, that had been an agreement with him and with the child and everybody else, and he wasn't predisposed not to blame. He was predisposed to blame and get angry. Yeah.
So you met this guy in 3D and had a... So is that true? You met him in 3D on the Earth?
These are two different guys. So the guy for my daughter, I've met him in 3D. I met him in this waking consciousness, just like we're talking now. The other guy was an online connection, and I went back and remote viewed everything, and it checked out, but he was impossible to deal with. So I kind of went, you're impossible to deal with. So okay, let's not deal. And then one was a fiance of mine who I accidentally got pregnant. Accidentally, unintentionally. He was an experiencer. His best friend was an experiencer. He's in terrible denial. If he walked in here right now, he'd say, "No, I'm not." And I'd be like, "Yes, you are." But our child had a genetic problem of a type of dwarfism, and we weren't married yet, and he had commitment issues and alcohol issues. And in January, the aliens came and they had a discussion with both of us about what we wanted to do, whether I wanted to try to have the child naturally or whether I wanted them to take the child. And he wanted them to take the child because he didn't think he would stick around for a developmentally delayed child with a lot of physical issues that would need a lot of medical care, or even possibly not even stick around at all because of his other issues. Of course, I wanted to keep the child. But then when I looked at the situation of how hard it would be for him to get the care that he needed and to be educated correctly, and how hard it would be on my body because there was a real chance I could die in childbirth with this one because he had hydrocephalus, or he was going to have hydrocephalus, that they agreed that they would take him. And I was still working with Dr. Mack at the time, and it's in the next book, but I went to the doctor and she looked at my uterus and said, "You look like you're 5 to 6 months pregnant." And I said I could really only be 3. And she arranged for an ultrasound a month later, and I probably grew another 2 more months, so I was probably about 7 months pregnant. And then the day of the ultrasound, I went to call them to say I was running late, and they said, "You're not on our schedule." And I said, what do you mean I'm not on your schedule? We don't have anything here for you. And I hung up the phone, and I knew that I wasn't going to be able to get the ultrasound. That night they came, and no baby bump, no nothing. I looked full on 7 months pregnant, woke up the next morning crying, well, by the end of the day, crying hysterically, but no baby bump, everything was gone.
Wow.
And that's my son. And that's my other son, who is completely human.
Right.
And he was, I don't even know that they did anything to him. I don't think they have, except fix him so that he can. Yeah.
Yeah, we've had stories that some people can't live down here, but on ship they can live a long life, and they apparently have technology to, help them make them comfortable, but not to cure them, that they can be returned back to Earth. So we're going to have Sid coming on in 1 minute, which will be our break. Yeah, when we get back, I want to talk more about that because, we have these 3D human experiences and then on board ship, and it really blows your mind when you meet somebody that you met before on the ship and vice versa. And so it's an interesting dynamic. What do you want to cover when we get back?
Oh, heck, I don't know. Just ask me questions.
We'll just do flow consciousness. Okay.
Yeah.
And Sash, what do you want to do when we get back?
I like the idea of a flow of consciousness.
Yes. Sasha likes the flow of consciousness.
Okay.
And what's your website real quick while we're waiting for the music?
It's ElizabethAnglin.com.
And how do you spell that?
It's Elizabeth with a Z, and Anglin is Anglin. Like if you were going fishing and you left the G off, Anglin.
Okay, we're going Anglin. So, okay. Here comes the break. Mute your mic. We'll see you in 5 and 4, probably, 4 minutes.
And we'll be right back after this message.
Join Revolution Radio every Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time on Studio B for Momentary Zen with host Zen Garcia at freedomslips.com, the People Station.
This is Thomas, a.k.a. a Mad Painter. I'd like you to join me Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for Open Canvas. Don't forget to bring an open mind.
Yes, folks, that's right. Bring an open mind to an open canvas. Again, that is Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern. UFOs to government corruption. This is Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here.
This is the people's war. It is our war. We are the fighters. Fight it then. Fight it with all that is in us. And may God defend the right.
Warning! Warning!
We gotta stop them! They're gonna kill us all!
See how the trouble you've started? We they the government, be they industry, be they organized labor, be they anyone, human beings. Time when the operation of the machine becomes so odious, makes you so sick at heart that you can't take part. You can't even passively take part. And you've got to put your bodies upon the gears and upon the wheels, upon the levers, upon all the apparatus, and you've got to make it stop. And you've got to indicate to the people who run it, to the people who own it, that unless you're free, the machine will be prevented from working at all.
Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported talk radio station, throwing ourselves upon the gears of the machine. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
You called down the thunder, well now you got it. Right! You tell them I'm coming! And hell's coming with me, you hear? Hell's coming with me!
Revolution Radio. All right, thanks for listening while we took that short break here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. And now we're going to get back to your host.
Aloha and welcome back to the Sacred Matrix. I'm Janet Lessin with Dr. Sasha Alex Lessin and our producer, Debra DeFranco, and our guest, Elizabeth Anglin. And we're talking all things ET here today on Revolution Radio Studio B. Before we get back, I'd like to remind everybody to please go up to the donation button on revolution.radio at the top left is a tab. Make your one-time donation, or go to the Patreon button and make your recurring donation. And we do thank you very, very much for donating, because that allows us to stay in the air and bring you all these wonderful shows. Dr. Lessin, what do you want to say?
Just, we have Elizabeth Anglin here, and incredible font of wisdom. And this is the time we'd like our producer, Debra, what would you like to ask or say or seek a reaction from our guest?
Oh, good, yes, because I forgot you the other time. I'm so sorry. Debra!
No, it's okay. My big question is, she talked about she had fear when she first understood that these abductions were happening.
Talk directly to her. She's listening.
Hey, Elizabeth, you said.
Yeah, Elizabeth, you had spoke about how you feared these abductions when you realized they were happening, and that you don't fear them anymore. So what was it that made the fear go away? And was there a change in your faith during this process?
Well, the faith, I like the faith question a lot, so I'm going to answer that first, because it's more, the fear was a gradual thing. I had a friend in high school who, I'll answer that first. A friend in high school, not really a friend, but a boy in high school, had been killed during one of his experiences. He had come back with a hole in his head that was cauterized. And the fear, when I really had my way come up, was really sort of realizing how many times I'd been abducted, that this is what had happened to this boy, and that aliens do make mistakes, and they could, do something to you on a ship, and you could get put back dead, or you could get morphed into a wall. So it was sort of like the transporter fear from Star Trek, or from the original ones, like the guy wouldn't get in the transporter because he didn't want to turn into a pile of goo. It's like, how are you getting me through that wall? And am I going to get stuck in it? But then the other thing was that there were some pretty difficult, hard physical and emotional things happening in these experiences that led to a lot of other anxieties. And it was actually just facing them. It was going through the fear and having someone like John Mack there to say, well, look, you're really, really tough because that already happened and you survived it. And when that is said at the right time and the right way, you really begin to feel your own strength. That already did happen, and I survived it, and I came back and I went to work the next day, or I went to work and I went to school, because I was working and going to school full time at that time. So I did it. I'm really freaking tough. Oh my God, what kind of a badass am I? So it was that sort of reinforcement of, rather than what a Bud Hopkins would do, is like, oh, you poor victim. Oh, but don't you see how victimized you are? John would say, you're a badass. And it's like, yeah, I am. And, it's a simple little thing, but you need that kind of support, which is, yeah, it was tough and you got through it and you coped and you went and you did your stuff and you're living your life and you're highly functioning. And, oh my God, go you. But also going through each thing without it having being a question of, well, how bad was it? I know exactly how bad it was. And I also know for how bad it was that I came out the other side of it intact and whole, and I'm okay, as intact and whole as I could, as anybody could. And I'm okay. I know a couple other people who are probably a little tougher. I think they're more in denial, but they might be a little tougher than me. I don't know that they're always feeling everything that they felt when they're in their regression. I know what I felt. I know it was bad, but I know I came out the other side. John didn't really give a corner for living in victimization the way Bud did. And he also didn't take advantage of experiencers by saying, I know better, you're just the victim here, the way another person whose name I won't mention has done. He said we're co-discoverers, we're co-researchers, we're co-creating. And he really did put, and maybe some people think this is wrong, but I think it's very right to say, there's a reason why you're here. There's something that you want to do. What is it? Okay, well, John, this is what I want to do. Okay, let me help you with that. So he empowered the experiencers who worked with him. He didn't say, well, we can't do that and you don't know and you've been confused by aliens and they just lie to you anyway. He literally looked at everything and he listened and he paid attention and he gave it a benefit of the doubt and he took it at face value as much as he could. And when he couldn't take it at face value because of his clinical training, he would delve into how much of this is you wanting to be a victim? How much of this is you living in your pain? How much of this is you wanting to be wounded and wanting attention? And he didn't put up with that. And the thing is, this is the kind of thing that if you want to live in your victimhood, you can. If you want to live in your wound, if you want to be special, if you want to be blah, 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 you can. But with a clinician like John, he's like, I see that, and the next thing you know, you were sorted out. And he literally would have to say like 2 sentences, and you're like, oh, right, got it, Wow. So that was the fear. It was just a lot. I had 27 regressions. I've had a lot of time. I actively went and did a project to help myself get over my fear that had nothing to do with John or Bud or anybody. I still have fear. Like, I don't need, people that I know actually showing themselves to me physically, without my consciousness being slightly altered, so I'll forget it. I like that now. I'm okay with forgetting it. I'm pretty much sure what's going on, so I know I'm not forgetting anything too terrible. There is a certain level of comfort. I've found my comfort zone. Now, my faith. I, at 14, became a born-again Christian. You could not make me be Jewish and disavow Christ. That doesn't mean that I'm not open to other religions and anybody who's Jewish or anybody who's Buddhist or anybody who's anything else. It means that my faith as a direct, the way I was taught my Christianity is, ask Jesus, have a one-on-one relationship with him. Well, I'll tell you what, I do have a one-on-one relationship with Jesus, and that relationship works for me. And it helped me out greatly through this whole thing. And some of the things, I'd be praying to Jesus. I'd be like, I got aliens, dude. What am I supposed to do? And he's like, keep going. You're supposed to be learning about this. Right? Not, they're evil. You should kill them all. Hate them. Keep going. You're supposed to be learning about this. Good job. Pat, pat, pat. Keep going. But that's how that works for me. So.
Wow, that's interesting. I have a question. I want to make sure Debra's done. Are you done with your question? Do you have a follow-up question or additional question?
No, ma'am. That's it.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you so much. Yeah, I'm not really, I don't identify with any religion because I'm just in a different space, but I find myself praying all the time. I'm not sure what I'm praying to. So that's one thing I say, Sasha, what am I praying to? But there does seem to be something, some comfort in that. You know, when you're in a situation and you don't know how to handle it, you just go, oh, please.
Yeah, I mean, I would describe my born-again Christianity as boundless born-again Christianity, which is, hey, well, you know, I think of Christ as a bodhisattva. I think that one of his jobs is to help universalize us, and so his core teaching is, you know, that we're all one. We're all one. So, you know, love your enemy because your enemy is you.
Right.
You know, and there's some core teaching there that is completely universalizing, and if people would just follow that, we would be galactic citizens in a heartbeat, and in a good way. In a heartbeat, in a good way, and it wouldn't be a problem.
In a good.
So, you know, but people are pulling up Leviticus again. What the heck? You know.
Yeah, I get that. Now, Sasha, come over here, please. Do you remember when you were, so Sasha was going through holotropic breath work with Stan Groff and John Mack. Sasha and John were studying with Stan Groff in holotropic breath work. Now, do you remember having conversations with John about his work? And this was back, what years were you doing this? Do you remember?
I didn't keep track of the years.
You don't know the years, but it was in the 80s, right?
Probably
80s and 90s. Okay. That was a good answer if you don't remember. Do you remember anything?
Yeah, I'm reluctant to share his content because it was in a sacred therapeutic context, and I don't really want to talk about what he said about himself.
No, I'm talking about when the ET information was starting to come out. Did you share anything on a professional level?
I promise not to talk about that stuff.
I
can't, honey. It's different.
Yeah.
Okay, never mind. Next. Next. I had no time for them to just asking a question. Okay, now, I wanted to go back because you were having these children with these people that some you met and some I did. You knew who the fathers were. There were 3 different fathers. And let me just share something. I became aware. I got married at 16 because they were doing some things with me. I was aware I was being taken and things were going around with children and reproduction. And this is in my teens. I started having sex at 13, which I realized, looking at it, it was like they were pushing me to become sexually active.
Right.
They told me at one point that they were retrieving the DNA from my partners that was, encouraging not having protected sex. Retrieving the DNA, retrieving fetuses, something about the natural conception through, copulation, and then, so that's why I got married at 16, because it's like I thought on some human level, this will stop all this from happening, but I realized it didn't stop it, but they liked me to mix my DNA with different humans, and so that was part of that, and then I met several of these people, like later on, after I got single again, I was dating again. I'd get involved with somebody. I met him in Hawaii, and I'd start looking at their kid pictures at a certain point in the relationship, and I go, I was on boardship with that kid. So they started us when we were teenagers, or even younger. They started matching us, pairing us.
When you're younger, yeah. Teenage, pre-teenage, yep.
Pre-teenage, and I was shocked that I had 2 of those. And then when I met Sasha, Dr. Lessin, we were real hot for each other, and we had made love in the afternoon. And suddenly I felt to me, I can't quite describe, but when they're coming towards the room, there's a shift in like pressure or temperature. I mean, I can't quite describe, but there's a shift, and they're coming. Barometric pressure, something like that. So I felt them coming for the door, and this is broad daylight. And it was like, am I ready to have them come right now? Broad daylight. I'm totally conscious. And they stopped, and they said, oh, you're with him. And I go, yeah. And they said, okay, we're not going to bother you again. but I had contact, but it was no longer about, taking me out the 16th floor of a, of an apartment building. They stopped that type of, it started to be more conscious contact, like Whitley Strieber describes. And Whitley apparently is able to have full-on, daylight conscious contact, no more blanking him out. Now, this past, 4 or 5 years ago, maybe it was less than that. I lose track of time. I keep track in my diary. They came in and they just materialized in my bedroom. And I felt something behind me. I turned around and there was this, 5-foot-tall owl. And I said, "Oh, really?" And then they shifted. And I had this whole conversation with them, which I wrote down, but I don't remember right now. So you haven't been able to do that. From what I understand you saying, you haven't been able to do that full daylight contact and not having a knee-jerk fear reaction or some kind of fear reaction.
I tend not to ask them to do that. Like, I've seen them coming. I've known I know what happens with me is my whole entire house will change. And I've watched it change, and I'm like, oh, now the house is in a ship. Okay. Or now, and I'll watch that for a bit, and then I'll let myself go out. Because what happens with me is they reverse the polarity of my energy field. So normally I'm running from the middle up and over and out. So things are coming up, up my spine and through my crown chakra and then back down around the egg. Well, what'll happen is they'll reverse it and I go to sleep.
Oh, wow.
I get to the point where it's like, okay, all right, yeah, go ahead, just reverse me and let's go. And then I can go back, because of my son. I used to get visited every Monday and Tuesday night, and I'd go do things with my son and one of the guys that I work with on the ships, and we'd go work, we'd go do stuff, and I'd see my son and we'd visit, and it was I was up in Colorado in the middle of nowhere, nobody was going to see this happening, and it was only really, I knew it was happening, and I knew what we had agreed to, because I can telepathically converse with him any time I want, and what'll happen is a screen will pop down, and it's just like doing reading, and we'll have in my head, I've got a little Zoom screen in my head, and we're having a conversation, and we'll decide on things, and then I'll be like, okay, I'll see you later, Monday or whatever night, but I don't really, because my associations with when I used to get turned off, when I was an abductee, were, a lot of non-pleasant things happen to my physical body. I don't necessarily need to go through all of that segue into the other place and remember it and have that in my consciousness to be processed the next day. I have stuff that I want to get done here. I have clients to see. I have a book to write, I have horses to feed, I have animals, I have friends. So if you remember all that stuff, you are in a state of carrying all that stuff and then carrying everything else that you carry at the same time. If I don't remember it, I pretty much can get a crap ton of stuff done because I'm not overthinking what happened, with this other work I was doing. I've got brain space here, brain space there. If I need to go remote view it because I'm not sure what the heck is going on, I'll go remote view it, or I'll call somebody up and say, what did we do last night? And they'll be like, we did this. Oh, okay. Got it, moving on. So it's just easier for me not to, and the other thing is, I don't give a flying nugget about being quote unquote an expert who is all that. Right. And a lot of people, Whitley does. Whitley really does. Love you, Whitley, but you are a paternalistic mother effer. I mean, you think guys are like, you have to be the expert or you're just nothing. Well, I'm sorry. There's a lot of ego involved with that and I don't have time for it. I have other stuff to do. So, I have enough ego to do what I need to do, but I don't need to be an expert for the exterior world who's like, well, how come you can't do this yet? Well, why don't you try to carry all that information in your head and deal with your day too, honey? Because I'll tell you what, it doesn't work. At least not for me. I do a lot of stuff. I just glimpse at it, but I don't need to know because I gotta eat.
I understand that kid where you come from. It's just, lately, I don't know, I feel such bliss in the experiences, and I've been through the fear stuff, and I'm not sure what shifted. You said
Elizabeth's amused at this troll that's biting at her toes.
Huh? A troll?
Yeah, that's right. She's getting, you don't care you don't care anymore. They can't affect you.
Right, they can't affect you. And I noticed that I got to that point where they don't affect me. But now, and I'm not saying that I'm better or worse or anything, I'm just sharing it. It's like now I've gotten to the point where I'm very happy. I'm like ecstatic. Yeah. It's like, my friends came to visit today, and I don't know how I got there. I don't know what happened. I don't know why. But at one point I was like, when I was a kid, I would leap from the doorway into my bed because somebody was going to grab my feet. It was just this terror. And then when the reptilian guy was trying to suck my soul out of my head, my heart would race like a little bird in your hand about to drop over dead. And then somehow from this whole lifetime of constant contact, I have shifted into this bliss, extreme, I don't know, it's just absolute bliss and joy that
consciousness.
I have a lot of fun. I can tell you, I remote viewed, I either have a grandchild or a nephew, I don't know what he is, but he's a little blue alien. And man, I have such fun with that kid. He sits on my shoulders and I pretend I'm a horse and he uses my hair as the reins. And I tell him about stuff that I learned on Earth, and I can't, where he lives, he can't go ride a horse, but I can show him, the cues on me, and we can play at that. And even to the extent, like remembering my son telling me that he was getting married and he didn't want my advice on relationship because I'd never been married. He wanted his father's. And he wanted me to let his father know that he'd be coming and not to be freaked out. So I did that, for his father. Said, oh, by the way, that kid that disappeared, well, he's coming to see you because he wants to get married and he needs advice. All right, I'm out of here.
So they get married? They have,
Yeah, they get married. The human kids that I have are married, and my daughter's married to a very tall blue alien engineer, and I actually don't know who my son is married to. I just, when he said, I don't want your advice, I went, okay, I'm out of it.
You've never been married.
Yeah.
Sasha,
it's obvious to me that you both are channeling the archetype of crone consciousness, the wise women in the American Indians very specifically say that we better listen to the old grandmothers. They're the one that know what's really going on.
Well, when it comes right down to it, what's better than teaching a kid how to ride a horse? Whether it's you as the horse or another horse. In my reality, that's fun. Kids giggle. Every kid likes to, play, So what's not to like? There's no more of the creation and the angst and the what's going to happen to me about that. It's more, oh, cool. Yeah, you got a sense of humor. All right, let's go do some stuff. So, I don't know.
So, do you have any questions for us? I want to reverse a little bit.
Oh, wait, I got to know more about the horse first.
Okay, well, wait, let's just say...
It's your...
Okay, go ahead, ask the horse.
Well, it's your totem or your alter ego. What's the horse? What do you like when you are a horse, Elizabeth?
Oh, well, I was raised with horses, and horses were my first conscious experience of telepathy. So, it's working together in partnership with someone, whether or not you're making physical cues or you're in a telepathic conversation with them. Horses are partnership toward movement and getting. It can be work, it can be travel, it can be exploration, partnership and exploration, partnership in fun, partnership in movement, but also having that sort of, we can be telepathically connected and it's okay. It's safe. We have this, in this society, we have this terrible fear of using our intuition and our telepathy, that if you're doing that, you're talking to demons and something will happen to you and the bad will come. Well, guess what? Things are what they are. If something appears to be bad, it's probably, like if something is telling you in your head to jump off a cliff, that's not good. Don't do it. But direct telepathic connection, is not something to be feared, and horses don't fear it. Animals actually don't fear it. We are the only animal on this planet who has been stricken with tremendous amounts of fear, and tremendous amounts of fear of connecting with each other on a spiritual level, a telepathic level, a mental level, a physical level, connecting with each other simply because our skin color is different, or our socioeconomic situation is different, or our education is different. I mean, this amount of fear that we have is being preyed upon at this time, so that we're being manipulated into wanting to commit acts of violence on each other because of this amount of fear. And so horses to me are forward movement without fear, and also this joining together. And it's much like a ship. A horse and a ship is kind of the same thing. I work with ships. I love horses. My relationship with ships is very similar to my relationship with horses. It's, it is a telepathic connection. It's an energetic connection, and it's toward movement and exploration and getting work done. But it's a real partnership. It's not a partnership. It's a real partnership, not a fake, not a hierarchy, not a my job is this, your job is that, stick to your corner. It's, hey, we're going. Let's go. Where do you want to go? Okay, think about it. All right, I want to go here. All right, let's go. And, horses do that, ships do that, but it's togetherness at the same time. I feel least lonely when I'm with a horse or a person who knows me well, or a ship. I'm least lonely at those times. So, but that's a direct connection that's conscious, and horses helped me understand that was possible when I was a kid. So.
Oh, thank you.
So what's your mission? So you're here on the earth. Have you uncovered the reason you came here?
I really think that my mission was to work with John and to do disclosure, and I think that we either timed it wrong or there's more of the story that we don't know yet. And so I do need to finish my books. But I
can't wait.
I know, I gotta hurry up. But I also think that, there were multiple parts to my mission. I mean, now people tell me that they think they know what my mission is, and I think I'm just cosmic AAA. So, that's cool. Right on me. But I've heard other things about what it is from various people who don't know each other. Some people say I'm a protector. I'm like, okay, fine. I think I'm cosmic AAA. Well, I think
that? You're going to change my tires?
No, it means if somebody, what happens oftentimes in the hierarchy with the Greys is that a ship will break, and the pilots will call their friends to come pick them up, and then they'll leave the ship behind because they'll get so many demerits for breaking a ship. And so these little ships that are meant to be in partnership with a pilot and a crew are sometimes left behind, and they're sitting out in places, getting very lonely and very bitter. and they really don't need to be left behind like that. But the utilitarianism and the pragmatism of the gray collective is such that you really have to be as perfect as you can be not to get relegated, like lose your position. So there isn't a lot of forgiveness. And so I'm kind of, go help them get back where they need to go so they're not sitting around on Earth getting bitter and lonely. And also connecting up with humans who don't know what's going on, because that can energetically be a problem for human beings. If there's a ship,
how do you get them? I think you told us about.
I work with other. I kind of work in the background with guys who work with ships. So, it's a team effort, but I just happen to be part of the team that lives on Earth and has another job and has to make bank to live. Because I'm not.
Are these ships created like? There's a confusion around the ships. Are they like created in some kind of plant, a factory, or do they form themselves by conscious? Tell us more about the ships and how they're created and their design.
Well, some of them are.
But yeah.
Some of them are energy beings / biological beings / grown atom by atom with an exoskeleton around the energetic biological being. The exoskeleton provides protection and support for the beings that are inside. So it's actually an endo and an exoskeleton at the same time. And there are various other components that help ships connect up with pilots. And it's complicated, but they're made, but they're both. They're both biological, energetic, and mechanical to a certain extent. Quantum mechanical, but mechanical. Definitely quantum mechanical. So, think about where we're going with quantum computing and then magnify it 1,000,000 times. And, it's like they're where we are right now.
So a lot of people are afraid. Would this be, are these ships, are they AI or
no.
Is intelligence, just intelligence or?
No, it's a being.
It's a being, right?
It's a being.
Explain
it's not AI. Yeah, this whole thing, like the Stephen Greer thing saying the little guys are robots. No, they don't do robots like that. Yeah, they don't they can re-embody.
Greer's a robot.
What?
We're not going to talk down on people.
I don't think they talk down on them. I'll just say this. I've never experienced, and I've met a lot of different members of the Gray Collective. I've never experienced the robotic kind, and I've had personally much more experience than he has, as far as I know. So that's all I have to say.
Same here. I experienced a lot of consciousness coming out of. Actually, I feel the consciousness in animals and in machines and in trees.
Me
and
too.
rocks.
Stephen, I love you. I was just joking.
Okay,
thank you for being so entertaining.
We love you dearly, but whoever talked to you about that just really did a whammy on you. Because you went, But, his other stuff about calling in ships, I've seen that work for people, and I know people around here that's worked for, and I'm like, yeah, that's cool. That's, and how that whole calling in of the ships and treating them as sentient beings, yeah, that's right on, dude. You go. So, good work.
So there. I had a ship that was coming from my house for, I don't know, about a month, here and there, like every third or fourth day. And I don't know what it wanted, but it was definitely a sentient. It revealed itself to me. It materialized right in the middle of the day. It was so weird. It was like right in front of my eyes. So I didn't have to move my head up or down or left or right. It was like, I'm going to be right in the center of your vision. And then it started making noises. I asked it where it was. It said, under your tree. I said, how'd you get under the tree? Well, we just materialized there. So, but I'm not sure what that was about. Do you have any insight into what would make a ship want to contact me and interact with me for several days?
What would make a ship contact you and interact with you? Well, it has something to do with you. Yeah.
Huh?
I mean, it was definitely there for you. So
yeah, it was there for me. I think it just wanted to prove me that there was such a prove to me, but I never get witnesses. It's so frustrating.
Well, yeah, but that's kind of it's you kind of have to decide how much confirmation you want or need. Do you want to go through ontological shock again? And how much of it do you want to go through again? And if you're good with your tea only being so hot and it's comfortable for you to sip on it at that strength of heat, then you don't need that. That ship was there for you.
Right.
You were doing some work over a couple of days with that ship. It was just there for you to do that work.
Yeah.
No biggie.
Sasha heard it. You remember hearing it?
No, but there's just different sensitivities. Some people see, you can see their deceased relatives around them, and they're talking to them, and some you can't. It's different sensitivities to different levels of consciousness, right. And you're gifted in certain ways, Elizabeth, and it's wonderful. And I love that you're sharing, and you too, Janet, what you got. This is great.
Well, I see the cat seeing things that are not there for me. Mm-hmm. So the cat can see a different spectrum.
Yeah. Cats are awesome.
Okay, what else?
Well, it's just, from the existential perspective, you created your reaction to all of this. And it's perfect, and it couldn't be any other way, and it's absolutely what you need right now to challenge yourself to go to the next level of consciousness without losing any of the lower levels that you've already achieved. And so it's really cool. That's what I think.
Right. You do, like, if you're building a house of consciousness, you really don't want to make it that there's air where mortar should be. It's like you still need that physicality of that mortar. And maybe it's a little looser. When you lay it down, the mortar in between the bricks is a little looser and it's more flowing. But you don't want it to be air, because you're not going to have the right kind of support. You can go too far out and make yourself discombobulated, and traumatize yourself again, and I'm not into doing that. And I think there's enough stuff that I don't know that if someone were to pull me off the street and try to interrogate me, I'd be like, yeah, I willfully forgot that. Sorry, dudes. It's like, you can try. Good frickin' luck, You ain't getting nothing out of this one. Why? Because I made sure to forget it. That's why.
We absolutely used to do that in our therapy practice, Gestalt, where we hypnotized ourselves to forget whatever transpired, so we could be in the here and now when the fresh when the client came in. So we were terrible to testify.
Right. Right. Yeah, it's like, yeah, I know some stuff. I'm kind of an expert. You're an expert on what? I don't know.
I'm sure. So where's this going? Are they going to ever reveal themselves to us, or are we going to burn up? We've got fires everywhere now, and I guess people are probably saying, hey, global warming is real. The whole Pacific. It's on the West Coast.
There's multiple timelines about all of this. I mean, I've looked down some of the timelines for some of the different alien groups, and I've looked down. The bottom line is we have our karma with the planet, and it's not a pretty karma. It's not going to be, it's not going to be pretty at all. The hope is that enough of us will stay sane and not be more crudely mentally manipulated during the coming trials and tribulations. And I'm not even saying this in a religious sense. I'm just saying, guess what? Planet screwed. It's going to be rough. So, you know, keep your wits about you. Don't let anybody mess with the reality that is in front of you at this time, which is things are on fire, things are warming up, there isn't any Arctic ice. And what does this mean for a monoculture of wheat? It's bad. And what does that people not having wheat mean for political structures? It's bad. And what does PSYOPs being run through the internet mean for political structures and social structures and countries? It's bad. So on so many different levels, there's a whole crap ton of bad coming our way. And keeping your paradigm to, okay, what's in front of my face? Who is my neighbor? Who are my people? Not that anybody isn't your people. Everybody is your people, and every being is your people. But how do I behave, and how do I react to all of this in the moment? And does that reflect what's in my heart? And what's in my heart is I love everybody. I want everybody to be well. I want everybody to be protected. I want everybody to be safe. I want lots of kids to play horse with their parents and grandparents.
Yeah.
So it's not about what somebody tells you should be thinking. To me, it's about what do you want to put out into the world? What do you want to transmit to the world? And if you love everybody, then this is the time to start loving everybody and everything and every critter, whether they're from another place, whether they're hiding under the ocean, whether they're hiding under a mountain, whether they look like bugs, whether, it doesn't matter. If you love everybody and everything, then love them now.
Oh, beautiful.
Wow, that is wonderful.
Yeah. And move back from the coast. Move up for higher ground.
And move up to higher ground. Right? And take care of yourself. Take care of people, take care of yourself, and don't get caught up in the blame wherever it's coming from.
Will they intervene, or will they just let us do our things? I've been to some meetings and I've said to them, please help, please intervene. If there really is Star Trekian non-interference clause, which obviously there isn't because they've been interfering all along, just like Kirk.
Well, look what you did to Jesus when we sent him.
Yeah,
Do you think we should help you again?
No, I mean, really. What's your latest contact? Have you gotten any information in the last 5 years or whatever about the situation now?
There's some timelines about a really good disclosure coming up in the 2020s. There are some timelines that include that. Really good, really sure disclosure. Uh-huh. The problem is what people will do with it. How people will treat it, what they'll, is this confirmation to some people that the demons have arrived and this is the end of time, so just go ahead and get out your AK-47 and start shooting everybody? Or what is it? It comes down to that we have a lot of people who aren't taking responsibility for their own reactions to ontological information that goes against what they've been taught or what makes them feel empowered to believe. Were
you there at the panel at the 2018 conference with Randy Kramer? I think it was the last night, and we were talking about, the false flag events and what people would. We had this conversation. It seems like you were witness to it about what people will do, and they were really concerned about, people killing, going crazy. They realized there was only I wish I had the stats, but something. And this did not get recorded. I recorded all kinds of stuff, and it was so late that I could only pay for the to a certain amount of time, and it was like a gem. But we talked about the false flag. We talked about the second coming of Jesus as part of the false flag, and Randy had clear stats on, I'm going to have to have him back on the show, clear stats about the percentage they thought would do what you were saying, go crazy, say the demons are here, start shooting everybody. But actually, they have the ability, just like in even 1951, the day the Earth stood still, that if they want to neutralize a weapon, or they can stop people in their tracks, they can do anything. I laugh.
They can't stop everybody in their tracks.
Huh?
They can't stop everybody in their tracks. I mean, I love Randy dearly, but there are some things that he says that just don't bear out, given things that I know about how powerful this one is and what their reason is and blah, blah, blah. They can't stop everybody in their tracks. There aren't that many aliens running around that can sit there and stop everybody in their tracks.
They can stop people in your immediate vicinity. I mean,
well, mine, sure. In mine, I'm golden. Not everybody else is golden like me. I'm freaking Jesus' second coming myself in terms of being protected. But that doesn't mean that everybody else is. Do you understand what I'm saying? I have a relationship. I have a job. I'm protected. Are you protected? Is somebody else, is my neighbor protected? No.
No. What I'm saying is, I've seen them come into an area and turn off everybody.
Yes,
I've seen them they came to my neighborhood when I was a kid.
Yeah, that's a neighborhood. A reasonable sized ship can turn off a neighborhood. No problem. Right. Doesn't mean that they can turn off Chicago, New York, Philadelphia, Houston, Texas, the whole entire state. No. There aren't that many.
Go out at once and start killing each other just because some aliens came in the sky. We've had over 50 years of preparation for the extraterrestrial presence through our science fiction.
You get people online, and then we already have enough problems with how things have been twisted to, the original stuff that we were coming out with has been twisted in so many ways that somehow it's being used for political reasons that it was never intended to be used for. It's not about that. It's about understanding how things work.
Listen, from my earliest childhood, I've had this recurrent dream of taking tractors and making great holes and taking weapons, all kinds of weapons and tanks and big things too, and putting them in these great big holes and then shoveling and putting the earth over them and then dancing together over this. This is our destiny, to get rid of all these things and to feel our comradeship.
Right. Was it Nancy that was talking to me about like the future vision of the very agrarian society with the round houses and the ceramic nuclear that they were powered by nuclear, but it was in a ceramic matrix, so it wasn't putting off any bad stuff. And everything was biodynamically grown. People were more disconnected and living in small communities or larger family things. And there wasn't the travel that we used to have. And another friend of mine has looked at something that's got there was an EM pulse. So we, literally it's very old types of transportation are available, not the newer types. Maybe something's going to go on with the sun, so the electronics that we have aren't going to work in the same way, or we're just going to be so careful about pumping out excess energy that all of these electronic things that we have in our cars and our computers and our lights are not going to be allowed anymore because the planet will actually kill us. But that's going to lead to a big die-off, no question about it. It's going to lead to improved ways of doing things that are already available in terms of agriculture and the guys who are saving the seeds from the Mayans, the corn seeds, the teosinte, that's going to become important. Any of the old wheat seeds, quinoa, the older seeds that are not genetically engineered in any way, that have high adaptability, that they can adapt to the coming heat and drought and periods of wet and locust, because when you have drought and then you have a period of wet, you get locust and flying locust, even if you're in the United States, even though it hasn't happened in over 100 years, it still can happen here. So there are all sorts of things that we could be doing And I'm just seeing, our person said, is somebody here is growing teosinte in their garden. Right on. There are all sorts of things that we do know that we need to do, and there are people who know that we need to do it, and that's the kind of information that needs to get out to people. How do we build sustainable communities that are non-resource intensive, but are resource creation abundant, and food abundant, clothing abundant, music abundant, creativity abundant? We're going to change how we do society, and in order to adapt, we are going to have to adapt. And
I've heard I've seen all the variations on the scene when I was 4, and they showed me the 24 most likely potential variables of how this pans out.
Right. Eventually.
This is somewhere in the middle. That we're, and it's all these things are just experiences that human beings can have. So
right.
If we're in this world, like, we came over from the old world to the new world. We had to start over in the Americas, and some people died out. I mean, that's just another start over. So some people want to do the start over, and we're going to be the pioneers. We're going to either do it on this planet or go to another planet, and it's just a story, and it's an archetype, and we can play that out. So, right. And then I've heard other scenarios, and I guess I paced them and saw them, where then we have the Star Trekian breakthrough, and we have the warp drive and the interstellar travel, and so there's a whole variation on that theme of kind of in the Star Trekian world, and away from Star Wars. I'm more into Star Trekian realities.
Right. And it could be both.
It could be it could be just a selection. It's kind of like which virtual reality game do you want to play?
Okay, so here's another thing that'll blow your cookie jar open.
Okay.
So I used to have a problem getting it all done. And what I meant by that is I had a problem with myself because there were so many things that I knew that I wanted to be doing, needed to be doing, work that I had to do. And so I got invited to be a medium at a private party in California, in Burbank. And this was in 2006 or 7. So I flew to Burbank to this private party with these people who had been, originally they were in the Sai Baba group, the original group that brought Americans over until all that stuff happened with that. But they were good people. And they had invited a woman who was a medium who did trance mediumship to do readings for everyone. And so she got into trance, and I go in to ask my questions, and her being is talking, he's saying, you can stop worrying about getting it all done. There are 12 more of you who are getting it all done. and I went, what? And he goes, there literally are 12 more of you doing all these iterations of things that you've imagined that you should be doing, want to be doing, could be doing. And so all of these things are happening. You are so totally on top of it. Quit freaking worrying about it. Right. And I went, what? And it was the 12 physical realities that are lined up with this one, the 12 parallels.
Right.
So we not only have our timelines here, we have the most likely timelines, and 12 more of them, sitting right beside us, and all of these things could be happening, like, me seeing the people out, in the roundhouses, dealing with it and adapting, aliens coming and taking over could be happening in another, all of these different things are happening, and the me that is there is doing the thing that she's supposed to be doing. But, so, you start expanding out, fractalizing out how many different ways this could go, and you gotta start going, which parallel dimension am I in, and which fractal of which parallel dimension am I in? Oh.
Oh. And that's exactly what they showed me on board ship. They said, you don't like this one, just switch the channel, change the lane, and shift your focus and go. I mean, if you're not enjoying it, why do it, right? So just do something else that you like more.
Or maybe me gustan todas. I love them all.
You love it all, right? So maybe be victim, and so we were going down the thread about Oh God, it was so interesting. I had a million questions. Like this QAnon they're creating this scenario, which is kind of leading to the apocalypso, to the Civil War to and it's like it's so surreal and unreal. And then you wake up to the news and all California's on fire and people are running and there's nowhere to run and I forget who it was.
Trump in his stomach.
It was it Marianne Williamson or no, it was our future vice president. She says, well, you want to make sure you have your bag packed and make sure you have your pictures because they're not replaceable and get your, so, Kamala Harris, she's giving instructions about, cause she's still in California. Nobody knows where it's going. Here's your bag and you got to run and figure out where you can run. But how do you figure out where you're going to run? So anyway, it's so surreal. And then I go on to the chat on Revolution Radio, and I went on right before the show, and I went, oh, my God, the scenarios that people are putting out there based on this election, and I just had to laugh. It's like, this is so hysterical. None of it's real, and all of it's real. And what real do you want to choose? Where do you want to go in this? So, I kind of agree with Randy, and some things is like, we're making this happen.
Right.
And like you said, you just have to choose love. Is this love? No.
Yeah. Choose love. Like, I have friends and neighbors here. My neighbor thinks that my hybrid children are demons who are the evil spawn who need to be killed. And I love her dearly. I have friends down the street that I go out, we go to the patio and we once every week or two, because I'm not doing very much, but we'll be out on the patio all together at the local restaurant connecting, and they are the staunchest right-wingers in the universe of right-wingers. And you know what? If the crap hits the fan, I know that those guys will be there to protect me as much as I'll be there to protect them. I love those guys, right? And so it really comes down to, bottom line, what is the most important thing here? Love is protection. What does everybody want to be? Protected. And what are you protecting from? Well, you know what you're protecting from? You're protecting from going psychotic, schizophrenic, schizotypic, and schizoaffective all at the same time because of some crap somebody's telling you on the internet, somebody who doesn't even know you and who is manipulating things for their own purposes and vampiring you from your pain and your fear and causing you to live in an adrenaline addiction. So turn it off.